Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Thanks for logging on. Today, we journey back into the days of classical antiquity. It's said that Helen of Troy was the face that launched 1,000 ships, and this, right here, is the dial that launched 1,000 fanatical online web fora. You're looking at patient zero in the zombie outbreak. This is the Panerai Luminor Marina PAM00001. This is the PAM1 1997 A series, the first of the post-Vendome line. And you know something? It's a genuine article of history. Few watch brands can parallel the energy and excitement that accompanied the emergence of Officine Panerai in the mid to late 90s. Originally a combat dive watch of the Italian Navy during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the company had become something of a dormant force during the 1970s and 80s. The bottom line is that this shape here originally saw the light of day in 1950, but it wasn't until 1993 that it made its way onto the civilian market as sort of an experiment. There were three models initially: the Luminor Marina with small seconds at 9 o'clock, and the Mare Nostrum chronograph, which is an occasionally seen special edition. But it was the Luminor Marina, specifically the Luminor case generally, that took the public's imagination by storm. Not so much immediately, but over time, its charisma grew sort of like a tsunami at sea, like an avalanche, like an unstoppable force building momentum. And the bottom line is, you can see why. Right in the hand, the watch is chunky. It's got an honest appeal, a tool watch style legibility to it. It's got that charm that starts with the patina and works its way outward to the almost cushion-cased profile. Now we'll get into that patina in just a second, but I want to show you what this looks like on the wrist. This is an any man's wrist, a little bit petite, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters for our Italian friends out there. Buongiorno. The bottom line is, I don't have an exceptionally large wrist in any way, but this wears comfortable, it wears natural. This was designed to be legible underwater and in hazardous and severe conditions, and it still is to this day. You can see it's got sort of that charm of 60s, 50s Rolex and Blancpain 50 Fathoms dive watches, in that it was clearly designed to do a job, and it still does it beautifully. A little bit of different thinking at work here, though. During the 1950s, Panerai patented this crescent-shaped crown guard. Not only does it protect the crown from blows, always a good thing when you're going into harm's way, but the locking lever itself allows you to easily access the watch so that you can wind it, you can pull the crown, and you can set the time. And you can do all of this without having to unnecessarily thread it in and out, compromising the seals. When the crown guard is down, it just has a cam action that seals it all back under pressure. It's an ingenious idea. It's a Panerai original, and I feel it's essential to the appeal of this watch. But there's a lot more going for it than just visibility, legibility, honesty, and history. For one thing, Panerai's built a history of its own since those early 90s introduction days. The bottom line is, a lot of collectors today look at watches like this A series, PAM1, and they think, this is the beginning of a new kind of collector craze, a modern vintage movement. And they speak of these watches with the kind of reverence that you normally hear reserved for 50s Seamasters and Submariners, 1960s mil-spec Blancpain 50 Fathoms. And it's a modern mythos of sorts. If we're going to use our classical antiquity analogy, it's almost like the Aeneid, the idea that Aeneas and his soldiers fled Troy in its dying days and went on to found Rome. That was Rome's foundation myth. And you could argue that this Luminor Marina in the early post-Vendome days, right after Richemont or its holding company purchased the company, kind of represent a foundational myth for Panerai. In those early days, some celebrities were using them, not because they were paid, unpaid sponsorship. Sly Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, they adopted this watch because it was butch. They felt that same sense of authenticity that the guys crawling the forums, starved for information, starved for access, that they felt. And you could see what they were into. Today, there's a little bit of a sense of a passage of time here. Panerai makes a lot more watches than it used to, and the idea that this A series, one of only 1,500, is now a vintage watch doesn't seem so crazy. When Panerai is making 75,000 watches a year today, to know that this is one of only 1,500, and one of even fewer of those to have survived with all of its original documentation, manuals, boxes, and accessories, you can see why people are beginning to talk about a watch that's not even 20 years old as a true vintage collectible. And here's another reason. Look at that tritium dial. Now you can see that the lume is considerably browned. That's not a simulation, it's not a tribute, it's not a virtual patina. That's what happens when true tritium radioactive lume ages for the better part of 2 decades. Now, no two of these are going to appear exactly the same because tritium doesn't age uniformly. This one, as if its provenance and condition didn't make it desirable enough, has one of the best tritium patinas I have ever seen. This is almost the color of a beautiful piece of light leather or the sands of a desert. I really can't describe it. I really can't do it justice with an iPhone, so you're just going to have to take a look at it. Take a look at the richness of it in the high-resolution images on our website. Now, as I alluded earlier, this watch is remarkably complete, not just in great shape. The watch comes with all original boxes and papers. Everything you would have received had you actually found a Panerai authorized dealer in 1997 is available and will come with this PAM1. Now, this Luminor Marina demonstrates the kind of innovative anti-counterfeiting documentation that Panerai included with its watches back in the day when no one was really thinking about that. You get the original movement sticker, the COSC certificate, the chronometer certificate for the OP2 pocket watch based movement. That corresponds to the movement sticker. The movement sticker features a number that corresponds to the number filled in on the warranty card, and all of this corresponds to the numbers on the case and the movement of the watch itself. It was remarkably innovative, not just a completely new look in watches, and by the way, no one was building a 44mm watch back then, no one but Panerai, but the documentation and the packaging itself is almost a historical artifact in its own right, the dawn of a new era in which watch enthusiasts and collectors truly cared about those things, and in which sets that came with the watches became just as important to collectors as the timepieces themselves. This is a piece of history. This takes you back to the days of Sly, when he was wearing these things around Rome while filming Daylight. They take you back to the days of Guy, when Guy Verbiest was founding and running the Paneristi forums online. They take you back to the dawn of the Angelo Bonatti era, the man who started running Panerai in the post-Vendome era and has hung around to this day, making him by far the longest-lived Richemont CEO I've ever heard of. And the beginning of O.J. Watley and Watch You Want, because this is where we got our start. When Panerai fever was just beginning to set in across America, O.J. was getting into Panerai, not as a businessman and not as a dealer, but as a collector and as an enthusiast. And I know this watch and watches like it mean a great deal to him. So if you want to see a watch that has real meaning to Watch You Want, to O.J., to Paneristi around the world, vintage watch fans in the modern paradigm, check out this Panerai Luminor Marina PAM1 on our website, watchyouwant.com.